The only reason the Atlanta Braves were able to survive the 2024 season was because of a dominant pitching staff. And while they lose some key contributors, and it'll be really hard to replicate those numbers, this group could be just as dominant. We'll get into that in our pitching preview today and also break down the latest spring training game where Bryce Elder had a bit of an up and down outing. Brian De La Cruz continues to impress. We'll get into all of that on today's episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at Shortstop Ball. Check out the podcast on X at LockedOn_Braves and on Instagram at just Locked On Braves. If you're new and watching this on YouTube, please stop what you're doing, hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button, and leave me a comment down below as it does help the show out a ton. Whenever you do that and you're listening on the audio version, you can help me out by leaving me a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. And thank you so much for your support here at Locked On Braves. We're getting geared up for the 2025 season. Cannot wait for it to get here. But right now, we got some spring training action to talk about. Unfortunate injury news with Nacho Alvarez. We'll discuss Bryce Elder's outing as well. But we'll start out looking at the starting pitching as we continue our previews. This week, we look at the infield. On Tuesday, we look at the outfield yesterday, and today we'll be looking at the pitching staff, both the starting pitching and the relievers. And I said it in the cold open here, but the starting pitching was the only thing that helped us survive 2024. As rough as all the injuries were on the position side of things, and look, you lost Spencer Strider on the pitching side of things too, so it wasn't great there either. But with just how difficult it was to watch the Braves last year from an offensive standpoint, it was one of the better pitching seasons we have seen in a long time. I mean, you had Chris Sale win the NL Cy Young Award, have the NL Triple Crown. You had Spencer Schwellenbach come out of nowhere and just dominate. Reynaldo Lopez going back into the rotation for the first time in a while, just straight dominate with an ERA of under 2. I mean, it was just an incredible season. Obviously, you had Max Fried and Charlie Morton in there as well. Max Fried had his ups and downs, but for the most part and overall, he was Max Fried. It was just a remarkable season, and the Braves needed every bit of it to get to 89 wins and reach the postseason. So starting pitching is certainly what carried it in 2024. We're hoping that's not the case in 2025. Certainly expecting the Braves offense to help out a little bit more than they did a year ago, but I still think this pitching staff can be incredible. Before we get into what it looks like in 2025 and the projections, I want to go over the 2024 numbers again, just because they're fun to look at. And it's really the only fun thing that I can look back on in the 2024 season. 3.49 ERA was tied with Seattle for the best in all of baseball. So tied for the best ERA in all of baseball is a pitching staff that's the starters and relievers combined, and the best ERA in the National League. 23.5 FWAR was tops in baseball by nearly 2 points. So their pitching staff rated out with an FWAR of almost 2 points higher than any other pitching staff in all of baseball last year. 9.58 K per 9 was the best in baseball. A 3.50 xFIP was first by 17 points over the Phillies. I'm telling you, I don't know that we appreciated it enough, which is part of why I want to go over it again. This pitching staff was unreal last year, and the Braves still barely made the postseason. That's how bad the offense was. Their walk per 9 was 6th best, so not only were they the best at striking batters out, they didn't walk a ton of batters either. 0.94 home run per 9, that was 2nd best behind only the Royals, so again, tops in the National League. And it's not like they had a lot of luck either. Their staff batting average on balls in play was 300, which was the 7th highest in Major League Baseball. So as good as they were, it's not like they were getting a ton of luck with balls in play. They weren't. So again, just speaks to how good and how dominant that pitching staff was last year. They were 3rd in Major League Baseball and WHIP, 1st in the National League, lowest average exit velocity against, and the 2nd lowest barrel rate against, 1st in the National League. The only other pitching staffs that really could compare were the Mariners and the Tigers, both in the American League. But in the National League, by far, the Braves were the best pitching staff in all of baseball last year. And I think you can even make the argument they were the best pitching staff when you combine both leagues together last year. I set all that up to say I would not go into this year expecting them to repeat that. Just because, like I said, in 2023, I would not go into 2024 expecting the offense to repeat what it did, and it certainly did not. You got to hope the drop-off isn't as drastic as we saw from the offense in 2023 to 2024, but you can't expect them to be the best pitching staff in all of baseball again. What they did last year was just, it was insane. It was one of the better pitching years that I can remember and in a long time. Dominant. Anyway, we've seen some good pitching years, but just the pure dominance that they pitched with is something I haven't seen in a long time. Now, I do think this pitching staff can be really, really good once again. And I think it can be a top 5 rotation and maybe the best rotation in the National League, again, depending on what happens with those Dodgers starters over there, if they all can stay healthy. But that's also the concern for the Braves. That's a concern for every Major League Baseball team is, can they keep their starters healthy? But I think if you do, this staff has a chance to be one of the best in baseball again. And it starts with Chris Sale at the top. His 2025 projections, and I'm using Steamer projections this time, not Zips projections like I did with the hitters. Zips, I feel like it was a little too low, while Steamer feels like at times it could be a little too high. They project Chris Sale for 31 starts. I'm going to go ahead and say it now. I don't think any Brave starter gets 30 or more starts this year. There's just hopefully no reason to. And I think the Braves are going to be extra cautious like they did last year. Maybe we see somebody get to 30 starts, but I would be a little surprised if we see anybody get to 31, 32 starts this year. But they have Sale projected for 31 games started, 14-8 record, 186 2/3 innings pitched. That would be great if you get that from Chris Sale. 230 strikeouts, a 3.07 ERA, a 1.07 WHIP, 4.5 FWAR. Those are all really good projections, and I think pretty reasonable projections. Again, the only thing I would say is probably I would take out a start or two and maybe knock out this, which would take down the innings to maybe 175, 180-ish, and the strikeouts maybe to 220-ish. But I think that ERA 3.07, again, I don't think he's much higher than that. But I do think that's fine. And the whip, with him not walking anybody, I think his whip's going to be around 1.0, 1.1, certainly not much higher than 1.1. Spencer Strider, I put him as the SP2, and I'm including him in there just because I'm not expecting him to miss a lot of time. I think he's back by the 3rd week of the season at the latest. His 2025 projections, 21 games started, 119 1/3 innings pitched, 148 strikeouts, 3.20 ERA, 1.10 whip, and a 2.9 FWAR. I think most of us would take that in a heartbeat. I think he can actually do a little bit more than that. I think he can get closer to 25 starts. Like I said, if he is back by that 3rd week of the season, I think he can get to 25 starts, maybe 130, 145-ish innings, which is probably putting him around 160, 175 strikeouts. I think that ERA, low 3s ERA, low whip, 1.1 to 1.2, but certainly under 1.2. I think that's pretty reasonable expectations for Spencer Strider. I know some people are worried about him coming back. I am not. Of course, that's without having seen him yet and what the velocity looks like. That's going to be key, but I trust in Spencer Strider. I also trust in Spencer Schwellenbach, who I have as the Braves SP3. He's projected for 29 games started, 172 innings, 166 strikeouts. I think he can get over a strikeout per 9. He doesn't need to. They have him projected for a 3.79 ERA. I think that's a bit high. A 1.2 whip is also really high for a guy that doesn't walk anybody, and 2.7 FWAR. So I think Steamer's projections on Spencer Schwellenbach are not all that great. They're fine. Look, if Spencer Schwellenbach put up that line as your 3rd starter, I think it would be okay, but I'm expecting more of 3.5 or lower ERA, certainly a whip under 1.2. That's the one I can't understand how you project him for a whip over 1.2 for somebody that doesn't walk a lot of batters. But I'm certainly expecting more from Spencer Schwellenbach this year than that. Ronaldo Lopez, 31 games started. Again, if he starts over 30 games this year, I would be surprised. I know he himself said that that's his goal and what he wants to do, but I would just be surprised if that happens. 179 innings pitched. Again, that would be fantastic. 189 strikeouts at 3.78 ERA. Again, I feel like that's high. There is going to be some regression for Lopez. He's not going to have a 1.99 ERA again. And 3.78 might be what it is. ERA you can have a couple bad outings that really inflate your ERA. That's certainly possible. 1.26 whip, 2.7 FWAR. Again, I'm hoping a little bit better ERA and whip numbers for Ronaldo Lopez, but as your 4th starter, you could do worse. So I think that's certainly fine. Grant Holmes, they have him projected for 111 and a third innings, 100 strikeouts, 4.18 ERA, a 1.33 WHIP, 0.8 F4. Not great numbers, obviously. I think the Braves are expecting more out of Grant Holmes than that. But again, if that's your fifth starter, I think that's probably okay. So I'm very excited about this rotation. Again, I think all that seems really good. But there are some question marks in here. Can Chris Sale do it again? Can he stay healthy for 28, 29 starts? Can Ronaldo Lopez push past what he did last year and get to, 170, 180 innings? Can Spencer Strider get back to who he was a couple of years ago? How quickly does it take him to shake off the rust and get back to that guy? Does Spencer Schwellenbach have a little bit of a sophomore slump? I'm not expecting that, but you never know. And what does Grant Holmes look like in the rotation for a significant period of time? And what does the depth look like as well? That's always very key for a rotation. Ian Anderson, they projected him for 101 innings, 86 strikeouts, a 4.37 ERA, a 1.41 WHIP, 0.8 F4. I actually think that's pretty spot on projections for Ian Anderson. But you look at the depth behind those guys, it's AJ Smith-Shawver, it's Bryce Elder, who we're going to talk about here in a second, Hurston Waldrop. But really after Elder, that's kind of where the list ends of guys that I'm kind of okay with. And even Elder and Ian Anderson, certainly wouldn't love having them in the rotation for an extended period of time. But if you're talking about guys that just need to come in and fill in for a little while somebody's on the IL for a couple of weeks, I can deal with that with Ian Anderson and Bryce Elder. But after those three, Anderson, AJ Smith-Shawver, Bryce Elder, you're looking at Hurston Waldrop, who I just don't trust right now as a starter, Davis Daniel, Chad Kuhl, Dylan Dodd, Drew Hackenberg, who we saw on Thursday. Wasn't a great spring training outing for him. Lucas Braun, Blake Burkhalter, Ian Mejia, Luis de Avila. So again, there is some okay depth there at the top, but it does drop off pretty quickly for the Atlanta Braves, as it probably does for most teams. Most teams aren't rolling out, 11 starting pitchers that they feel really good about. I do feel okay about Ian Anderson and Bryce Elder. I feel pretty good about AJ Smith-Shawver, but that's really where the depth kind of falls off for me for the Atlanta Braves rotation. But at the top, be hard pressed to find a better top four in baseball than what the Braves are able to put together. Like I said, outside of the Dodgers, but even that, I think this rotation can match up with them. It is good enough to match up with the rotation like the Dodgers. So I'm really excited about this group. Again, it's always going to come down to health with pitchers, and that's just the case for all team. Certainly the Braves have some more significant question marks in that just because of the history of some of these guys. But again, if healthy, something we can say all the time, I think the starting rotation will be top 5 in baseball once again. So let me know your thoughts on the starting rotation. How do you feel about it? How do you feel about this group? Next, we'll get into the relievers. We'll also catch up with what happened on Thursday in the spring training game. Another win for the Atlanta Braves. They're on a roll in spring training right now. We'll catch up with all that here next. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. Go check out Sully over at Locked On MLB, getting you caught up with everything happening around Major League Baseball. You can check them out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, just like you can Locked On Braves. We'll be back tomorrow afternoon on Friday for our weekly mailbag podcast. Look for a post on X from Locked On_Braves. Submit your question to that post to be answered on Friday afternoon's mailbag episode. Let's get back into our pitching preview here, looking at the relievers. And I'm going to go by what I think is going to be the starting bullpen to begin the year. We know pretty confidently it's going to be Iglesias at the closer role, followed by Pierce Johnson, Dylan Lee as your setup guys, Aaron Bummer in that mix as well. And then I believe Daysbel Hernandez is going to be that fifth guy. And that's kind of your core right now. And maybe even those top four, I think Daysbel is going to have to earn his way into that group to be somebody. But I do think that is your core at the moment. Iglesias being a solid closer. They have him projected for a 3.45 ERA and a 1.16 WHIP. Again, he can't, just like a lot of these pitchers, I'm going to say, he can't be as good as he was last year, but he has been really good for a long time now. I talked about this earlier in the offseason. I feel like he's kind of sneakily been, I don't know if that's a word, I just made it up, but he's been one of the best relievers in all of baseball for a while now. I mean, going on almost a 10-year stretch. You go from 2016 to last year. He's had 2 years with an ERA over 4. And most of those years, it's been an ERA between 2 and 2.5. So he has been one of the better relievers in baseball for coming up on a decade now. So to project him for over a 3.5 ERA seems pretty high to me because for most of his career, it's 195 last year, 275 the year before that, 247 the year before that. It was 404 in 2022, but then it was 257 in 2021, 274 in 2020. I mean, it's always been a mid-twos ERA for Bryce Elder. I know he is getting older, and you got to worry about that drop off at some point. But I'm expecting another good year from Bryce Elder in the closer's role. Now, he is not that dominant type of closer, but the stuff is just so ridiculous, and he can command it. If he could teach Bryce Elder how to do that, because Bryce Elder has a lot of stuff with movement, just like Iglesias, but Iglesias knows how to command it, and he's really good with it. So I'm excited about Iggy coming back and likely what could be his last year with the Atlanta Braves before we're looking for a new closer. Pierce Johnson in the setup role as a righty, Dylan Lee in the setup role as a lefty. Aaron Bummer could be in that mix as well as maybe that setup lefty. And you could use Dylan Lee as kind of that bridge man to maybe get you an out in the 6th inning and pitch the 7th inning as well at times when you need him to. But those are going to be your core 4. And then, like I said, I think Daysville is that next man up that could earn some opportunities in a setup role. And then the rest of the bullpen, I think your 2 lower leverage guys you're going to see at the start of the year are Angel Perdomo from the left side, a guy that they signed last offseason, knowing he wasn't going to pitch last year in order to get him for this year. Left-handed reliever, really tall. I mean, you can obviously see it on his StatCast page how tall he is, but seeing him on that mound, he is a very tall human being, and he's been pretty impressive already so far in spring training. So I think he's going to get one of those spots. And then I think Anderson PR, the Rule 5 pick, is probably going to get another one as a guy that can give you multiple innings and, has some potential, even to move up in a setup role. And, both of those guys, I think at the beginning of the season will start out as some of your lower leverage relievers. And then the final spot, I think, is going to go to Buck Farmers, kind of your swing guy at the beginning of the season, maybe your guy that comes up in a garbage role, but I think also somebody that has the potential to move their way up into a setup role. So I'm very happy with this bullpen. I know a lot of us, myself included, a little disappointed the Braves didn't go out to do more and shore up the bullpen, especially after the Joe Jimenez injury. But I'm excited about this group, especially if Johnson is going to start throwing that cutter a little bit more or the fastball a little bit more and get hitters off that curveball to change things up a little bit. It seems like they started to adjust to him. Go look at Dylan Lee's numbers at the major league level. They've been unreal. Aaron Bummer, obviously really like from the left side. He's a bit unlucky last year, but for the most part was really good. And Daysville has a lot of upside with a high velocity arm there. So again, I think there's potential for Perdomo and Pilar and Farmer to even become setup guys. So I really like what they have. And then the depth in the bullpen, you're looking at a Jordan Weems, a Jake Diekman, who's looked pretty good. Chasen Shreve, who looked really good on Thursday through multiple innings. De Los Santos looked pretty good in his outing of the day. Wander Suero, who just got sent to minor league camp. I thought Covey looked pretty good in the outing I saw him pitch the other day. Domingo Gonzalez, young kid on the 40-man roster. Roy Salinas, Amos Willingham. This is kind of where it goes off for me a little bit. But these are certainly guys that maybe down the road, an Ellison Joseph, a Hayden Harris, Roldy Munoz. I think these are guys that maybe you look towards the second half of the season that could come up and make an impact. But a lot of veterans there, a lot of potential. I like this bullpen. I like the depth of it. I think there are some really good arms in this bullpen. Again, I'd love for them to still, the possibility is there, to go out and get a David Robertson to kind of just put it over the top. And Alex has done that, like I said, most years since that 2019 season where he was scrambling to put a bullpen together. Pretty much every year since then, he's always made that bullpen move to kind of put that group over the top and give them that extra guy. He hasn't done that this year. So far, there's still some arms out there. I know Kyle Finnegan just got snatched up by the Nats the other day, but there are some arms out there that I think could do that for this Braves team. But if not, like I said, I still like this group, and I think they could be okay. We'll take another break here, and then we'll get into the game notes from Thursday where the Braves did get a win. We'll talk about the Nacho Alvarez injury as well as Bryce Elder's outing. We'll get into all of that here next. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for those busy days, whether I'm snacking at my desk here, putting the show together on a road trip, or just need a quick protein booster. Always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the end shell options are a classic favorite. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein providing all 9 essential amino acids. Don't know what that means, but it sounds like it's great for you. Whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, that's one for me too, where I can just grab them on the go. Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works as hard as you do. Get snacking and cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Well, the Braves do continue their winning streak in spring training, getting a 4-3 win over the Nationals on Thursday. This was the first televised game for a lot of Braves fans out there. I know my mom, shout out to you, Mom. Hey, Mom. Was excited about watching the game on Thursday night. It was on Gray TV, so you got to check that out. Obviously, if you have that, you're fortunate enough to have the MLB.TV app. I've been able to watch a lot of these games already, but I know I saw many people posting and talking about getting to watch the game. So that's certainly great. That 5 o'clock Central time frame is not great for me because that's family time. But either way, many people got their eyes on this one. And unfortunately, they got their eyes on Bryce Elder, who had a bit of an up and down outing. Really a rough second inning for Bryce Elder. And I say this all the time for Bryce Elder. I've thought about this a lot, and I've given this a lot of thought. The margin of error is so small for Bryce Elder. I think he has good stuff. I think he has the potential to be a big league pitcher. I said it the day that he was drafted. I think he can be a big league 4th, 5th starter for a club for a while. And I still believe that. It's just this club in particular, the Braves, they need more than that. Even out of their 5th spot, they need somebody that's more reliable than that. But I think there are going to be days where Bryce Elder is going to go out there and he's going to get a team that's going to chase those pitches just off the plate. He's going to get that weak contact. He's going to get some good batted ball and play luck. He's going to get an umpire that's going to give him a little bit off the edge. He got none of that tonight. There's some close calls that didn't go his way, particularly in that second inning. Again, if he gets those pitches, he's going to have a good night. And if batters are going to swing at those pitches, he's going to have a really good night. This Nationals team doesn't chase a lot. We saw that with them last year. They don't chase a lot. They're going to put the ball in play, and that's why they gave the Braves so much trouble last season. But all those things have to go right for Bryce Elder to succeed. He's got to have that umpire behind the plate that's going to give you a little bit off the edges. He's got to have that team that's going to chase those pitches just out of the zone and get that weak contact. He's got to have great defense behind him, and he's got to have some batted ball luck. And that's just too many variables to ask for in one game for 5-6 innings. He's just not a pitcher that can succeed in the zone. Even though his stuff does have a lot of movement, he just can't succeed in the zone. And here's what I've been thinking about, especially, after dwelling on this outing a little bit even more, but really something I've been thinking about for years now with Bryce Elder. I think the beginning of 2023, he fooled a lot of people. He fooled a lot of players in the fact that, again, he has really good movement on his pitches, but he's trying to get you to chase just out of the zone, to get you reaching on that slider down and away, to get you jammed on that 2-seamer running in on you. That's how he's going to succeed, and usually at the bottom of the zone. And I think for the first half of 2023 and really the end of 2022 as well, where he was facing a really bad Marlins and a really bad Nationals team, he was having a lot of success. But I think once hitters figured out that if you make him come up in the zone, you can do damage against him. And if I'm facing Bryce Elder as a hitter, I'm making sure that a pitch at the bare minimum is starting at my waist. I see anything below the belt, I'm just taking it, because there's so much movement on his pitches. There's a good chance that it's going to drop out of the strike zone. That two-seamer is gonna run down and in off the plate. That slider is gonna run down and away off the plate to a righty. I am not swinging at anything that is below my waist because it is most likely going to end up being a ball. And I'm also cutting off the top half of the strike zone. So I'm looking, if I'm facing Bryce Elder, I can focus on a very small part of the strike zone and say, okay, if I see a pitch here, I'm swinging. I'm not worried about him rushing a fastball up and in on me. I'm not worried about him rushing a fastball at the top of the zone against me. And again, if it's me, and I'm not a major league hitter, but just I've watched Bryce Elder enough that I can kind of game plan against him to say, if I see anything that starts out below the waist, just take it. If I see anything that starts at the waist or the belly button, get ready to swing. I see anything above that, I'm not, because he just doesn't throw anything up there. In fact, he actually got a strikeout tonight on a mistake changeup that stayed up above the zone, that was above the belly button. So I feel like he's become too easy to game plan for, and hitters have made that adjustment to him. And here's the last thing. I know I've gone very deep on Bryce Elder here. I don't know what pitch he throws to set everything up. Like all of his pitches have a lot of movement, and I think they're all really good put away pitches. I think they're all really good pitches to get somebody in a 2-strike count to chase on a pitch just off the zone. I think they're really good pitches to get a batter, who's in a 2-strike count that has to swing on a two-seamer that's running in on them and get some weak contact in a weak ground ball. I think he has really good pitches to do that, but he has nothing to set those pitches up. He almost just really needs to focus more on a 4-seam fastball that he can land at the top of the zone to change that eye level. Like I said, if I'm a hitter, I'm just looking down at the bottom of the zone. What can I swing at the bottom of the zone? It's kind of like the ball. And it was really the only hard hit ball off of him in that second inning, but it was the ball that CJ Abrams hit. I think it was a 2-seamer that kind of started at the belly button and it ran down and away from him, but it was up enough. Again, you see it at that level, it's going to be a pitch at the bottom of the zone, and he ripped it up the middle to center field. So I just feel like he's become too predictable as a pitcher. Hitters have figured him out and know that he doesn't have anything really to establish in the strike zone. All of his pitches are meant to get you to chase and to swing out of the zone and make weak contact. And until he can figure that out, I just don't know how successful he's going to be able to be at the big league level. It's going to take, again, those perfect conditions of a team that will chase, getting calls off the edges and getting that great defense behind him and getting that batted ball luck. And that's just a lot to ask for. So kind of my deep dive on Bryce Elder. Did not mean to go that deep into it, but let me know your thoughts on that because I've obviously thought about it a lot. Behind Bryce Elder, Chasen Tree pitched 2 scoreless innings, as I mentioned earlier. A lot of hitting a walk with a strikeout. Drew Hackenberg went inning and 2/3, walked 3, gave up 2 hits, but struck out 2. Somehow didn't give in any runs there. Nacho Alvarez got the start at third base and was batting second. I was really looking forward to getting my eyes on Nacho Alvarez in this game, but unfortunately he left after a swing and miss on a 3-2 pitch, immediately started playing with that wrist and ended up leaving the game. I did not see more of an update on him after the game, but hopefully nothing major there because I think he's I think he is the backup at third base. I don't know who else you go to at third base if not Nacho Alvarez. I don't know that Nick Allen has the arm over there for third base, but that could be a pretty, significant loss for the Atlanta Braves. If it's anything, it just said discomfort is what the Braves said. So again, hopefully it's nothing major there, but that is one of the reasons why I've been a little bit down on Nacho Alvarez. It seems like he has something like this every year. It usually comes at the end of the minor league season. You see him a little bit banged up and he misses time at the end of the year. So I'm a little worried that he's kind of injury prone to have these little hiccups throughout the season here and there. Nothing major yet, knock on wood, but hate that for Nacho Alvarez. So I was really excited to see what he could do over there, getting a look at him tonight, but unfortunately just one at bat and then leaving. White started the game, went over 2, started the game at shortstop, had a chance to make some spectacular plays in that second inning to help out Elder. The one on the ball in the hole that was a tough short hop that he had to try to slide and backhand. I would have loved to see him make that play just to see the arm because that would have taken a great throw to get an out with that. Another ball kind of up the middle. Again, just a bad luck for Bryce Elder as he jammed the guy, but it just kind of floated into the right spot up the middle, went right in between the two infielders. It looked like maybe he was a little bit worried about Eddie Alvarez running into him, so he kind of alligator armed it. And then a shot up the middle that he dove or jumped and tried to catch, but it went off his glove. So again, not saying he should have made any of those plays, but he had a chance to make some spectacular plays there and help out Elder and wasn't able to do it. Didn't really get a chance to see him do too much else. Did try to turn a double play and almost got the runner out at first with a really good throw, but didn't get to see enough of what I really needed to see for Eli White at shortstop. Again, I would love to see, I said this before spring training, I really want to see him at third base because I think they need some more depth there at third base, especially now with Nacho hurt. So maybe he'll play there next. Brian De La Cruz got a double off the wall. I thought it was gone off the bat. I think he thought it was gone off the bat, but it ends up just banging off the wall for an easy double. He's off to a good start in spring training. Cal Conley went 2 for 2, scored a run. Carlos Rodriguez had another hit. He's had a really good beginning to his spring as well. Baldwin came in late in the game and drew a walk, filling in at DH for Marcelo Zuna. And then Sandy Leon didn't homer in this one, but he did throw someone out trying to steal. If the Braves can hang on to Sandy Leon in the minor league level, again, I already love the catching depth that the Braves have, but a veteran like that, having a really good spring training, I don't know how much that actually means, but certainly we love to have the veteran stick around. So those are my takeaways from the day. The Braves did reassign Wander Suero to minor league camp as they continue to make roster cuts there, but that's really all the news of the day. Thank you so much for joining today. Gene Z. Gordian here, Jeff Berry. It says, why hasn't anyone signed Trevor Bauer? We're not going to go down that road again, but just no team's going to sign him, so might as well kind of get over that at this point. BC, Gene, Gordy, like I said, Miguel Fria, Elder is not an MLB pitcher. I think he'll make some starts for the Braves this year. We can argue whether or not he deserves those starts, but I think he'll make a handful of starts this season. Waylon Mercy, thank you for joining here live. Jeffrey Humphreys, as always, every day you're in here. Lob S. Iggy always proves me wrong. He proves a lot of people wrong. Again, I think people sleep on him. Go look at his numbers. It's almost a decade now of him being just absolutely dominant reliever. Jeff Berry, Waldrop was started in AAA. Most certainly, he needs to continue to work on things there as a starter, and then maybe at the midseason, you kind of just reevaluate. And if he's making those improvements, you continue to roll him out there as a starter. If not, I think you start making that transition for the bullpen. Gene wants me to get back on the Waldrop train. I was very high on him when he drafted. Loved the draft pick. Still do, because I think the ceiling is high. Like I said, I think he either figures out the command or control of his pitches and he's a top of the rotation arm, or he moves to the bullpen and he's a dominant setup closer type reliever. So I'm still very excited about the future for Hurston Waldrop, but I am starting to grow a little less confident in him as a starter. All right, that will do it with this episode of Locked On Braves. Thank you so much for joining us today. Subscribe on YouTube if you're new. Hit that thumbs up button. Leave me a comment down below. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and we will talk.